Okay, so XML feeds, JSON feeds, and ingesting external data. So let me go ahead and upload a few more files so that we can just go ahead and take a look at this. All right, great. Well, what I've done in your absence is just to put this little ingesting external data over here, XML parser, JSON servlet, SQL tool, the import tool, and then a little home page here. And then in the VTL folder, I went ahead and uploaded some sample files that we're going to .parse onto those pages. So if we open up the, here, let me see if this one, do I have import tool.vtl? Yeah, yeah, and we'll do something more fun. Okay. So I'm just going to parse these onto our page. So ingesting external data. All right, now before we get into ingesting external data, how do you prepare your own data to be consumed from an external source? So we'll do both ways. So if you got another system, you need to say, I want to ingest .cms content as a JSON feed or XML feed from .cms. Well, then there's nothing more simple than just going to, let me see, who do I want to? I want to get Adam Movies here. Let me pick on somebody else. I want to get Chi Movies. All right. So he's got these two movies here that I want to be able to, on another page from some other website, I want to grab his movies and show them via XML or JSON. So all you have to do is go down here to show query, and there we go. JSON. I want to see his movies via JSON, and I want to ingest them. So here is both Black Panther and Star Wars. So each of those pieces of content, it's under contentlets, and then I could do dot owner, identifier, mod date, all of these things I can get at via JSON ingest. Now you have to have some tool or some programmatic way to ingest a JSON feed on the other end, the same way that I'm about to do from anywhere that I want in dotCMS. I'm going to go grab and ingest data from somewhere else. Okay. And not only do we have that example as JSON objects, but XML as well. Here's our XML feed, right? And following the pattern for a proper XML feed. And you literally copy and paste that query to, and then you can tell them using, obviously unpublished files as false. If you wanted to make that true, you could. So you could change parameters in the URL based upon those properties that we've talked about for querying that exist in the system. One language or another language, live, working is true, whatever you want to do for those properties. Set that in the URL, make sure you test it, and as long as you're getting a proper feed, then you can allow someone else to ingest the data in the same exact way. Okay, and anything you can search for possibly in the content search manager, you get the example right here already set for you in the content search manager. So the content search manager not only helps you making your for each loops in Velocity, but also your REST API calls. Okay. All right. So now if we want to go get information from another system, so here, if I just go to the index page, just going to cover the examples notated here on this page. So we're going to talk about the import tool, which is just an alternative to a homepage. Instead of YouTube, we're going to grab marvel.com. RSS, really, you'd use the XML parser now. That's kind of outdated. So we're going to use the XML parser and the JSON servlet. and we're not going to use the get SQL results macro anymore. We've replaced that with a SQL tool that I create a page for? Well, I can't see it. Let me go to my live mode and maybe I can preview. No, I didn't. Okay. So, come on, slow server. All right. Oh, I put it here. I just didn't put page properties. Show menu. Save and publish. Okay. So the first thing we're going to do is the import tool. And if we look here in our documentation on dotcms.com, we should go to, import tool. There it is. And, a URL and a timeout, import.read. And it gives you all the specifications here for, you can set that, or you can just do the import.read and let it set the default timeout. So you are simply just ingesting whatever you are placing in the import.read, just like an iframe. So if I wanted to actually set an example here, I could first add widget, VTL include, create new VTL include, browse, training, TMG, VTL, import tool. So there's documentation, and here's what we are going to do. But if we're going to ingest the entire Marvel site, we can't do it here where we've got this current template. What you can do if you want a full page import like what I'm about to do. Otherwise, you could, and we've used this for two different things in the most common aspect. Let's just say in the middle of a field, you need to go and grab in a field on the back end, you need to actually go to a page and get values off of the page, and maybe even pass parameters into a page based upon things that have already been set. You could, and this is our little trick. Now that's hacky, but every once in a while I've needed to do it. What I do is I create a new page, and there's better ways to do this, but I'll just put import tool example and a blank page, right? And no cache, and save and publish. Now I'm going to lock for editing, and it's only got one container on our blank page template, and that's it. It's just .parse a container. I forget which container, but blank container. There we go. And I will add a simple widget, I guess, to the page. Simple widget, create new, and import tool example, and then we'll import .read marvel.com. But you could do another .cms page in .cms and load, blank page, get some values, something like that, and then ingest that. or show it in a custom field or something like that. I don't know. You need to show something. So here, there we go. And it looks better if we actually go to live mode. There we go. So I just did, an iframe of marvel.com, ingested it, and I'm getting their page and showing it on my page as if their page was my page. But you got to be careful doing things like that. Usually use it for your own content, maybe another .cms server. You can use the import.read as well for right here on demo.cms.com. .cms.com. We have it in our examples of how to get a remote widget. Demos, remote widget. 2 different examples on how to get a remote widget. You can do the JavaScript methodology, or does it even say do import.read? I thought it said do import.read. The import tool. Oh, I think, yeah. Or you can use JavaScript. The only thing that in our documentation, I think it mentions it. Okay, the toolbox XML should already be set. Not allow redirects, security, URL timeout. I know we had an example that kind of talks about your browser. Thought we had it right there. But I thought it was right here in the code, but maybe not. So you have to, in your browser, be a little careful. Did I put it on my page? The example. Oh, no. Get this guy back. Browser. No. But you can use that for remote widgets. I think it's in our, I guess you could use the REST API for that. The REST API you can go ahead and call remote widgets. We'll cover that later. So anyway, just a simple alternative for an iframe, okay, is our import.read. So if you want to do something like that, you can do it on a blank template. You can do it in, partial space. You guys just make sure that your template structure, your container, has enough space to be able to ingest whatever you're trying to ingest, whether it's from another .cms.com page or whether it's, from an external site. Right. Not all as useful as some of the other tools here. So let's go for the JSON servlet example. So if we wanted to add widget, we'll go ahead and get a VTL include. And hopefully my keys haven't all expired. Because I'm calling from some external sites. JSON servlet. Let's see if any of this is still working. No, that's old pull. Let's see if I can find. A newer example. Oh, well, that was more than I had counted on. This should tell me. Oh, well, that one's better. It's going to be that one. It's definitely not that one. Okay, so it should be this one. Okay, this is what I need. Now I know that save and publish. Good, yeah. Now, I went ahead and read. First, I had a Flickr feed. Then I did Ticketmaster, and I was pulling concert information, which was much more sexy. And then Ticketmaster changed their darn structure as well. So I get tired of keeping up with changing my developer keys and reapplying to be able to see it. And at least they got New York Times here. But it's no problem with our JSON fetch, which I'm doing right here. It's with their URLs, so I'll have to get it back in and fix this, which was working just fine until they changed the nature of the way that you can pull from them. Of course, if the feed changes, then yeah, then it doesn't work so well. So if we look at the actual feed over here for the New York Times, okay. So maybe I didn't copy everything quite well, or I probably changed it in the code and I didn't change it in the, in the commented out stuff. Yeah, this is it. Last time I did this, I went ahead and changed this key here. So now I should be able to do it. And that's my updated key. Okay. So using my little key that they made me apply for, and I hit the movie review list for the New York Times, then I get these movies. A.O. Scott, Western, and I can see it's all inside of results, right? So then the nice thing about JSON, you can kind of treat it like a velocity pull. You get the content map. So I can do results.display title and I instantly get Western. I can do results.MPAA rating and, well, that would be nothing. Byline and that. And then if it was a nested thing, if I needed to do results.multimedia, I could do then just .type, right? So that's why you'll see that in the code here. Cancel. So what am I doing here? So skip to this bottom one. Just doing set movies equals JSON.fetch and feeding it that URL. That's the JSON tool, JSON.fetch. And then I'm setting movie results to be movies.results so that I can get at the results from their JSON feed. Okay, and now I'm iterating over only the results. So for each movie in movie results, then movie.headline. It's super easy, to go and do this stuff. So movie.hi looks like something in there is not displaying, but because I got movie.headline.url title in here as well. That's giving me the URL so that I can click on it and then actually go to that movie review. So no, I do not want to. So if we look at the actual code,
then yeah, it's movie.link.url is the href behind the movie headline. So if we movie.link.url and we looked here, it's movie.link, right, .url, and that's where I'm getting that URL pattern from. So very, very easy, JSON.fetch, and you make your life happy. Much easier than the XML, but if you needed to do an XML pull from another external site, let's go ahead and parse the XML parser and show with a simple example from W3 Schools. So VTL include, create new XML parser. Okay. So here's the documentation on the XML tool. I guess we can go there. And so you can use to parse remote XML files, blah, blah, blah. And this is basically what we're doing. And we're doing the same thing, just our table looks better. Okay, so we're getting this XML feed, which is just right here. So inside of an XML feed that is called catalog, then there's a whole bunch of CDs, and then inside of the CDs, there's these text fields that are title, artist, country, company, price, year, right? So in the code on the page, I'm just doing set my XML equals XML tool dot read, grabbing that, all right, and then setting up a table, title, artist, country, da, da, da. And then for each CD in, and this is the way you get the children of my XML. So my XML.children iterator, right? And then for each of those children, I go ahead and set CD XML for each CD to XML tool.parse CD, which I've just set here, right? XML tool.parse each of those little children. Then after I've parsed each of the children in the XML feed and assign it to CD XML, then I can CD XML.title, which is, is just text, artist.text, country.text, company.text, price, and year. And for some reason, it's not parsing down here. I got something wrong in my code, I guess. Either that or there's a configuration set that's not allowing this tool to work. But you can see it is working right on our import tool page. No, sorry, XML parser page. XML tool, that's what it is. So it's the same code here. I got something off on the code on my page, I guess. But it's live parsing here and getting the fields from that W3 Schools. Right. So that is the XML tool. The JSON servlet, I think those are the most. JSON view, JSON tool. There's that documentation passing on to you. Send to all. Send to all. Those are the two most useful. Now, there is a possibility that you might need to SQL query some database. The only examples I've seen of this is where you're communicating with old rustic systems, that have no API, no way to communicate with them. I was working with a university. They had this old course catalog system that the only way was by DB connection. You would never do a SQL query of your own database, I don't think. Your own, certainly not your content repo. You'd use Velocity for that. You'd use Elasticsearch for that, Site Search, whatever, but you wouldn't SQL query. But if you somehow did need to SQL query your .cms database, or you needed to query another database that you have connection to, does not even have to sit on the .cms server, then you can just type SQL in the documentation. You do need to set a few things up to make this happen. It is not allowed by default. So I can throw the example on the page, but right now our server would need to have a configuration change to make it happen. First, the user has to have the scripting user role. There is a scripting user role to go ahead and do that. Then you'd have to go into your .marketing config properties, and you would have to allow Velocity SQL access to the .cms DB. Okay, that would have to be true. And then here is the parameters that you can go and set: data source, query param, start row, max row. And here it gives you an example right here if you wanted to go ahead and allow querying of your own .cms database. You can define all of your databases that you want to SQL query. You could just define them here inside. It's rare that you need an example of this, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but if we wanted to go to here, 4.2.2, whoops, where did I just go? .server, Tomcat, web apps, root, webinf classes. Here's .marketing config properties. Open with text wrangler. Where is that property? There we go. We'd have to search for allow velocity. Just search for that. There we go. About line 787. It's set to false, and it gives you some commenting on here on how to allow that to work, although it's not a macro anymore, it's our tool. And then this is how you would set it up. You'd set results equals SQL dot get SQL results, and then you'd set data source, query, start row, max row, so that it begins and ends with a maximum number of rows from your table. What if your table had 1 million different rows? You wouldn't want the page spinning on and on and on and on, right? And then for each row in results, then go ahead and spit some values out. So here for the SQL tool, I don't think the server is configured to allow us to be able to SQL query to the DB. Let me throw the code there and see, so you can see what I'm talking about. If you wanted to SQL query your own .cms DB, you could do it in this way. Add widget, include new. Okay. Yeah, it does not allow it because we don't have that configuration set, but this is what we would have to do. Okay, if you have a different configuration set, let's see, and this is where my local guy is configured. I could define different data sources I could query from. Web apps, instead of webinf, we go to metainf and the context.xml. And this is what I have set up as Postgres for my local server. And you know, .cms 422. This is my resource name. It's my .cms JDBC pool here. Okay. So, but I could, if I wanted to communicate with another Postgres database that doesn't even exist on this my local machine at all, it exists somewhere else, all I would have to do is another one, right? And I would have to define the full path to that database, username, password, and everything like that, and to communicate with as many databases as I want to configure here. Once I save, I restart my .cms, then I can SQL query against those other databases. Now, all you have to do is put the JDBC name, resource name that you put in the configuration file, you put that here as the first parameter. If you leave it default, then you're actually SQL querying your .cms database. Then you go ahead and put your query here, and we're setting query here to select distinct. You know, it's just a regular select statement from .cms. The database. So how do you construct that? You just go ahead and load up, you know, in my case, load up Postgres and I test a select statement. You're not allowed to make any statement other than a select read-only statement. But, you know, if as long as it's a valid SQL statement, then, you know, I can test that in my database, run my SQL statement, test my query. And did I copy my query? I don't even know if that structure inode still exists. Let's see. Yeah, it does. And this shows me the employees in my .cms database, right? Now you'll notice that there's text 1, text 2, text 3, text 4. That's why I am stating in my yeah, don't laugh. That's why I'm stating in my select distinct identifier, I'm not using the velocity variables, I'm using what's in the database, right? And then I would be able to iterate over the employees from the employee content type after I went ahead and set that list. Results list equals SQL.get SQL results. I pass that SQL statement query, and I say from the first line to the 25th line, right? I want to get employees. You just got to put some limit somewhere. And first name, last name, title, email, and then I'm just doing for each employee in the results list that returns to me. And then in velocity, I can go ahead and say employee dot text 1 or whatever that field happens to be labeled in the database. Now, how do you know that those are that way in the database? Well, it's also here on your content type. If we go to employee, you can search, open up employee, and it gives you right here on the content type what it's named in the database. Yeah, the alias name. So text 1, text 2, text 3. Okay, so text 4 is my email, text 1 is my first name. So the server doesn't allow you to do it by default. I would need to give myself the scripting user, and then I would need to go restart the server after doing the configuration to allow SQL querying of my default .cms database. But you can see how that works. Not common, so not super important, but in case you ever need to do that. And the remote widgets, there's already the example right here on dotCMS.com under demos. And we're ingesting a, let's see, I forget, where are we ingesting from? Remote widgets. I think it's log for editing. We're just getting it from the same exact site, that's why. But you could throw out, if this was from, demo HTTP, demo.cms.com, you just, put the beginning of the address and then the API widget ID and then the widget ID that you want to parse. So you could use a full path. This one's just doing a relative path from the same exact server that we're on, demo server, right? That is also in this remote widget that's right here, is also in our documentation for our API. So if we looked up REST, just widget API. Let's go here, and that's where you get that structure, right? To via REST access the widget API, or if you wanted to do that calling the remote widget, you can do that there. And we're doing this one by JavaScript instead of the import.read. Okay. So that example is already built into the demo there. So you can ingest external data by SQL query. You can ingest using the import tool, which is kind of like an iframe. And more importantly, the ones that I've done most often, I flew out to a client who needed a POC for pulling data from pharmacies. And because they were the distributor, and so they needed to pull for their pharmacies information about the drugs that they were selling. And so we did a JSON servlet, request there that we would read information from their, their product information and pull it down for their pharmacies. So, there are some good use cases for the XML tool and the JSON servlet. The rest, only if desperately needed. I wouldn't want to be SQL querying my database. And if somehow you were SQL querying your database, what would you put around it? The block cache, right? To control how many times that somebody hitting that. I remember there was a university that did a call to load like everything, from their resources. And instead of doing it in a paginated way, first call 0 through 25, then whenever they click next page, then 26 through 50. No, they were just loading everything on the page, and then they were handling it after the fact. We were like, what? And they were wondering why their page was slow to load. It's because you're calling a million records, loading them in, and then you're trying to handle it after the fact. No, you only call like 25 at a time. So, there are examples, but like libraries communicate with old systems, so sometimes you have to SQL query your own university database or something like that. So if there's a need, the tools are there. Any questions about ingesting external data?
No, we're all good. I think a couple of the lads are having to head off now. So,
Yep.
Is
We're
there
at the
any
end.
chance? Oh, perfect. Sorry.
Yeah.
I think a few of them want to get home for the football because, that's
Yeah.
what they're
Well,
like.
go. We'll talk to you tomorrow. And tomorrow is at the hour right at 8 o'clock for me. Not sure what time it is.
Yeah,
for
2
you.
o'clock for us.
Same as the first day.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to sound rude.
No, not at all.
Appreciate
I understand it's getting late for you, so I understand. All right, guys, we'll talk to you tomorrow. We'll start up with the REST API forms.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Take care. Have a nice night. Bye.
And you, mate. Bye.